So the Ace of Wands is the roots of the powers of communication. So it represents the spoken and the written word and all forms of communication. It's always, almost always light, depending on what falls around it. So if you got the Ace of Wands, for example, turning up with a sun card is a birth. Whether that's a biological human being or whether that's a new project will depend on the other cards around it. The Ace of Wands with an Empress card is a pregnancy. It doesn't say it's going to come to term. The Ace of Wands is a letter. The Ace of Wands is a book. It's all forms of communication, but it doesn't tell you a story. It's a noun. You got it? Now, so I'm just going to leave this here. Two of Wands, one of several things. This is in the book, but we might as well go through this in groups as well.
Look, can I just ask you a question?
Pardon? You can
If
say
it, can I ask you a question? Yeah. If the Ace of Wands was crossed by the Eight of Wands, would that be a forest?
The Ace of Wands with the Eight of Wands.
Sorry, no. The Ace of Wands, yeah, and the Eight of Wands.
The Eight of Wands and the Ace of Wands, no, not a forest, because there's nothing growing there. If you had the Eight of Pentacles there, it would be. Seven of Pentacles.
What would it be? What would it be? What would that be though? If it was the Ace of Wands crossed with the Eight of Wands?
New land.
New land.
Yeah, it could also be letters going out.
Yeah.
The Eight of Wands is just land, or it's communication going out. That's it. But put them together, and it's just new land, or talking about land, or land communicating. Yeah, but there's no forest. Because the one thing I'm very certain of is that the Eight of Wands is not forest. It's land.
Yeah.
Like land in Ewingsdale kind of thing. Land in Mudgee. You know, land out the back of the western slopes kind of thing. Okay. The Two of Wands is usually a major capital city. But the major capital cities can also include places that are city-like, which would be Byron Bay. Gold Coast is an example. Rio de Janeiro, it would be the Two of Wands. It's not the capital of Brazil, that's Brasilia, but it would be big enough. Very definitely. So you're looking at a major capital city, it doesn't say where. What comes with it would say where. Okay. It's also a really strong, if it falls with a person, they've got the world in their hand. Look, it's so obvious. So this is not a card of poverty or sadness or grief. It's actually, if it comes with a person, it's a card of prestige. The Three of Wands, are you sticking it together? No. The Three of Wands is at a distance. At a distance. It can turn up as representing a time sequence of 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, or 3 years, but it's quite often at a distance. It's also, again, if you can utilize places, that'd be really fantastic as well. I've just lived from 1991 in the Byron region, but I also know this one is, if I just went fairly recently down to the very tip of the Mornington Peninsula to do some filming overlooking the bay, which was quite astonishing. And I had to walk a kilometre downhill carrying all my camera equipment. So you see how the dude's at the top of the hill? He could be me getting ready to walk down that kilometre track to get to the beach. This is high up. So we're very close to the water. This one will continually turn up for people living in China or Hong Kong. And that's because of the boats or the junks in the water. This one will turn up for people living in the Outer Hebrides, for people living in very coastal regions of Canada, anywhere you like. This one could be the top end of Darwin, looking out from there. So it's that. It's just not this. Can you see the difference? The sense of stature, the sense of there's something more worldly about the Two of Wands. There's something more so-called, and I'm using the word on purpose, which is civilized, as in the dweller of a city, in difference to the Three of Wands, which is not necessarily a city dweller. You with me? So, if you put the three together, one of several stories, because I want to put it so that you can. This would be a new development. So it's taking a coastal place. It's not violent either. It's not like what is going on in Queensland to do with let's build a stadium over Indigenous land. It's not that. It's really just a little bit like, oh, we'll put in some toilets at the beachhead. We'll make it a little more civilized. Yeah, so you could have a lot of surface, but people will have this everything about this. Then the Ace of Wands stops being about communication, and it starts to represent that which is productive or what could be called positive. So this is not offensive. There's nothing offensive in these three together. So you get me? Any questions so far? It's saying it's a new place. So because it says it's a new place, you know that you've got two places, but this one starts out without any main building, or it's like, does anybody know White's Beach in the Northern Rivers? Okay, White's Beach, when I first moved to the Byron Shire, to get down to White's Beach to work midwinter solstice with the coven, we'd have to navigate this goat track that went downhill with slippery, slidey rocks, pre-dawn, carrying all our tat equipment and ritual gear. Not a problem. In fact, it was fabulous. But now when I go back to the Byron region fairly recently, that track has been developed. So it's no longer deadly. There's been boardwalks put in and steps out of wood so that the tourists can get down to White's Beach without dying.
Wouldn't it be the other way around then, Law? No, because you've got the Two of Wands at the beginning.
Okay, well, so from where I'm sitting, it's the opposite. From where I'm sitting, the Ace of Wands is first, the Three of Wands is second, and the Two of Wands.
Oh yeah, that's why I can't see it that way. I see it the other way.
So I'll move it around, and then it means something completely different to me.
Yeah. So that means it's a new thing. Okay, I can see it now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's going from where there's no public toilet.
Yeah.
At the top of the cliff to where there is. So it's just a little bit more civilized as a place. That's how you'd read those three. So it's a development, but it's not overkill. If it was overkill, it'd have all kinds of things like devil cards in there, whatever. Okay, so that's that. We're going to move a few of these. The Four of Wands is the epitome of a celebration. If this turns up with the Hierophant, of course, it's a marriage or a wedding in the traditional sense of the bells fucking ringing and the whole thing. But it's the celebration. So it's not just going to the registry office and signing a document. That's a party. That's the Blues and Roots Festival. That's Burning Man. That's Glastonbury Festival. That's the Edinburgh Fringe Festival right there. It's always joyous. This is always joyous. What can come with it is not necessarily so. What can come with it, what I've seen happen is this one will turn up, followed by the devil card, followed by the Five of Cups, which is a festival, for example, that will go and set up all the tech for. And when he's driving his little golf cart back, when he's heading back from the tech, and all the empty baggies are all over the ground, and then everybody leaves their shits in the bushes and doesn't bury them because the toilets were disgusting, and they all leave their tents behind, and they all leave their garbage behind. So over several acres there will be this. There's been a festival, but the devil card with the Five of Cups would be the incredible grief at the violation and the decrepitude that would have gone on because of the devil card, which is like people who are fucked up. The devil card is I mean, we'll play around with the Christian word, the devil. I actually use that. So with some people that come, despite the fact that it's got nothing to do with me as far as the philosophy is concerned, if the devil turns up and it's got to do with somebody's gaslighting, I'm going, you got the devil in your house with you? And I will tell you that fucking person can't pay me quick enough. And they usually know who I'm talking about. But so this one is the celebration for anything. Now, if I put it with the Two of Wands,
City, celebration in Coastal City.
that could be like, let's have a look at
the Blues Festival.
Oh, I've gone to New Orleans. I've fucking gone to the Day of the Dead. I'm having a wonderful time somewhere, but I'm definitely not necessarily in Australia. But again with this one, it could be the Edinburgh the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, because look at the little thistle. So there'll be little things in there in the actual card images themselves that will pull you, bearing in mind that all of these particular pictograms have been around since the 1300s. They could have been around sort of like for fucking forever into the future with this beside the point. But we are looking at that. And of course, this is Venice. Dear Venice. A writers' festival, excuse me. It's so fucking obvious. Look at it. Doesn't matter which side I put it. It's still a writers' festival. Ace of Wands is the pen. Four of Wands is the festival. Two of Wands is how good it is. Because the Two of Wands can also go, ooh, nice. Okay, so it's got that feeling. It's a little less sophisticated if you put it with the Three of Wands, see? But that can be the equivalent of a poetry slam. It's still fabulous. You can't get away from it. Okay, so I'm just going to mix a few together so that you get comfortable with that. Five of Wands. Five of Wands is a really, again, open mic. Yes, open mic. Thank you. Five of Wands, it depends on what it falls with. So the Five of Wands could be a mess. It could be everybody talking at once. Confusion. If there's rioting in the streets, there's no violence associated with this. When you put a Five of Swords with it, oh yes, you've got a riot. And also if you put the Five of Swords with it, you've got a strike. CFMU. And you've got industrial action. This is also a band, a musical band. So you can put this one with this one, and wherever it happens to be, it's still a band. So this is a group of people. You'll see this for every fucking musician you ever get. They're going to have a Five of Wands in their cards. Because if they're a session muso, if they're working in a production company, if they're working in a theatrical company, because this is theatre as well. Even if it's a 2 or 3 people. Yes, a band is a band. Okay, the fact that they're playing at a gig, that's the gig right there. And that it's in this particular city, that could be New York, could be Sydney, doesn't really make any difference. if you tell your client, oh, I can see a band playing at a festival in a major capital city, they go, yeah, that's my band. And you'll get it. They'll be busting to tell you, so that you know. That's what the Five of Wands is. Now, if I put the Five of Wands with the Ace of Wands, the writing's a mess. There's stuff everywhere. So it doesn't matter which way it goes. The I've got to go slowly. I get really excited about all this. The Five of Wands and the Ace of Wands is the process of writing a book. So that you've got shit everywhere. And you know you've got to go through and clean it up. But the most important thing is to start out with all your research, all the stuff that's going to go into the one letter. And I have people who I get people ask me to help them write their emails. Because, you know when you get an email from somebody and they're whinging? Why waste my time? That's your Five of Wands. Clean it up. Make it one brief, neat story. Similarly, if the Five of Wands goes with the Ace of Wands, and let's say we had a victory card with that. Let's put a small victory with it, or a more comfortable victory. And then we'll stick with what we've had so far. So there's a bit of a celebration about it all. Okay. Can also be a production meeting. I could have them around the other way, Fiona. Obviously, I think I need the other way around. Okay.
Yeah, you've got the Four of Wands first.
All right, so there's the production meeting. So everybody, with a good production meeting, you've got the lighting people, you've got the sound people, you've got the front of house, you've got the people that are backstage, the people that are going to work on costume, the people that are going to work on makeup, you've got the actors, the directors, and the camera people. So you've got a minimum of 5 people. Not a crowd, but a really nice handful of fingers. Do you get me? So there's nothing in there that's problematic. There's no death card, there's no Nine of Swords, there's no Five of Cups, there's no force, nothing, no swords whatsoever. It's just where it all gets worked out, and there's where the performance happens. And it can also be, once it's all worked out, this is very interesting because I don't know whether you've ever read a book by a woman called Tanya Tagaq, Tagaq, is an Inuit woman, and her book Split Tooth, that's what it's called, Split Tooth, is what's called an interstitial work. The Magdalena is an interstitial work, so it mixes fiction and non-fiction. Tanya Tagaq's work she's a rapper, an Inuit rapper, and she has been so abused as a First Nation person, also within domestic violence, also with sexual abuse and so on, and she's extraordinarily talented. And when I read this book, she mixes her poetry with her rap, with the story of her life, with her philosophy, and with her understanding of the Indigenous culture that she's from. That's an interstitial work. To do that well is fucking genius. But it will be the Five of Wands. And the Five of Wands with that particular, or it can be a collaboration that have come together. When we did Pagan Visions for a Sustainable Future, there were several writers that went into that anthology. So we could be looking at an anthology. Any which way you go, if it's got the Four of Wands with it, it is extremely productive.
You could have had the Three of Pentacles there as well, yeah? Instead of the Five of Wands.
Three of Pentacles?
Yeah, you like the me.
No, completely different.
Okay.
The Three of Pentacles, did you say Three of Pentacles?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, yeah. Three of Pentacles.
That's an interview.
It's not, it wouldn't be like people sort of.
No, that's a completely different scenario. I appreciate you bringing it up, actually.
Yeah, because it's not equal.
Three of Pentacles, nobody's equal. The Three of Pentacles is when a person is going for an apprenticeship, but they know exactly what they're doing. The Three of Pentacles is an interview. This is a gathering. The fact that it's got productive cards around, there's a sort of a difference between an interview and a gathering. The Three of Pentacles is much more professional. This may end up being a professional gig, a paid gig, But there's no pentacles in here, so it's not about the money, it's about the gig. We're looking at 3 cards. You know, your normal Grove map has got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21 cards in it. And those 21 cards would give you much more information. That may bring up the discussion to do with the practicalities in the interviews for who's going to come in and be the Sparky, but it's not in this. So that's your general statement. Okay. So 6 of Wands, which is your next card up in the Wands lot, is victory. Now the 6 of Wands in difference to the Chariot. The Chariot is the way shower pictogram that pretty much means the same thing, because the Chariot card is victory, but it's an earned victory. So the Chariot would happen if a person is getting their PhD, if they pass their truck license, if they manage to go into syncopation with the horse that they're training, if they get the house. The Chariot card is worked for, whereas the 6 of Wands is a person who just swings on into the room and is themselves victorious, and they just bring something light and bright and wonderful with them. It's just, the minute I see this, I go, this is a piece of piss. This is so easy. So they don't have to try. We could again look at the similar kind of a thing. It could be a simple thing, like before you go to Sevilla, you learn to say café con leche. Just enough of the language. If you're going to Ireland, you say sláinte mit a falsha. So just enough of the language to feel in the groove with it. And again, that could be the other way around, because I probably got from the wrong way I'm looking at them. So that's somebody who can speak in that place with ease. Sticking with Wands. We don't have to bring any of the other 78 pictograms in there. We'll just stick with Wands. Any variation of that. So this again is just, this one here, the 5 of Wands also should be mentioned, that if it turns up with an 8 of Wands, which we haven't got to yet, it's a multiple occupancy piece of land. So the 5 of Wands could be the number of people living on the multiple occupancy. There it is on the coastal region somewhere, and there it is. It's like it's doing really, really well. Now, if we had, for example, of 7 of Pentacles with that, and Death card with that, we'd have somewhere what's that place in Scotland called? Findhorn. Findhorn is where all these people came together. It's a group activity. It's on the coast. There was nothing there. They've created massive gardens through the use of compost, which of course is the 8 of Pentacles and the Death card coming together. Yeah, so nothing grows without death. So it makes it a lot easier to understand. So that's going to have to do with the multiple occupancy, the number of people living on that property. And it doesn't necessarily mean a mess. Again, you've got 21 cards around it in the Grove map. You've got 18 other cards to be able to look at the different sentences and see how they all come together. This is quite likely where you'll get that Lovers card we saw before. So there's dual occupancy. There's 2 titles. One title could be where all these dwellings are put up for tiny houses for shared housing. It's wherever you've got this gathering of like-minded others, because the 5 of Wands is not harmful. There's no harm. It can be the raising of a barn if you see 10 of Pentacles with it. It can also be a very large family living in a house. Yeah? Okay. 6 of Wands, victory. 7 of Wands depends on what it falls with, which is, some of these, they're only tricky because they've got to fall with a lot of things. 7 of Wands, if the 7 of Wands does fall with an Emperor card, it's a traditional industrial school. And the one thing about the Seven of Wands here, to do with the education system, is to understand, can you see any faces there? No. So nobody's listening. And it's also somebody who's talking over the top of other people, but you can't see their faces because that person's just doing all the fucking talking. You'll get this also with a 10 of Cups. You'll get it with a 10 of Pentacles if there's going to, or an 8 of Wands, if there's going to be an auction. This is the person standing up there going once, going twice, going 3 times. It'll be an auction. You'll get that with the client who's wondering whether or not they're going to sell their house on the private market, whether they're going to sell it on the public market, or whether it's going to go to auction. If this one turns up, it's going to go to auction. So it's really handy. It can also turn up, if it turns up with, for example, a moon card, and it turns up with a 9 of Swords, it can be schizophrenia. Because the person's trying to keep the lid on all the voices. But it also will turn up with long distance conversation because you can't see the face of the person you're talking to. That's changed a little bit since we've got video link. But if it's going to be video link, it's going to have a star card turn up with it. Because the star card's technology. So that's that. Here we have, I'm going to try and put them in the right place for you. Here we have the announcement that there's going to be a festival. And it could also be a teaching festival. So that people who are presenting their workshops and their trainings are turning up here, but they're talking about it. This is a perfect example of a TED Talk. But again, be malleable, because this could fall in the middle. It doesn't matter in this instance, because we just very rarely will all the cards come up in the same suit. But tonight, I'm just sticking with the one suit so that you're just really aware of it. Okay.
Would that be like teaching writing festival?
Yep. But it could also be somebody who is the leader of a choir, because this can also be song. This could also be communication. But again,
and a theatre. Could it be theatre? The 4 of Pentacles, 4 of Wands.
Yep. Yeah. For sure. It can be very, very definitely theatre, whichever way they fall. And again, there's nothing problematic. And of course, if I'm trying to put them in order, I think that's the way this is opposite to what I am. So the 6 of Wands first, the 7 of Wands, and then the Ace of Wands. Now this is somebody who teaches really naturally, really comfortably. If you think of Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
You think of Robin Williams in the Dead Poets Society.
So what they're teaching is communicated well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And no one's in charge. But this is a little bit like us sitting here, I'm doing this, and we can still talk. So nobody's prevented from talking, nobody's shut down, nobody's closed off. 8 of Wands, there we go, there's country. Or land. Very rarely will it be sending out newsletters, will it be sending out, I'll send a newsletter out twice a year. That'll be this. Yeah. But it's usually land. If there's pentacles in there, there could be somebody talking about the productivity of the land.
And if the Fool card was there, it'd be highland.
Yes. Yes. So it doesn't mean much more than that. We don't want to overcomplicate everything. 9 of Wands, I have 2 favourite cards in the pack. The 9 of Wands is one of them. I could give you a million examples, but the bottom line, the meanings behind this, first of all, it's like, what the fuck am I bothering to talk for? That's that little dude. This is also, this person has an accumulation of words. Been slapped about the head a few times. Going, I'm not going to bother saying it anymore. I've said it and I've said it and I've said it and I've said it and I've said it. I'm not going to fucking say it anymore. They've fucking had enough. And the first thing I ever learned was this card that says, don't cast a pearl before swine, was the expression that I was taught. In other words, this is a perfect example of parenthood. When your kid turns 14, they're not going to listen to you, no matter what you say.
I got one of them.
It's like, shut your fucking mouth. Don't bother with any of it. Just be quiet. You've done what you needed to do. Now just suck it up and bear it. But it's also knowing that the person's not listening. And it can also be not necessarily your client. It can be your client's partner who doesn't want to listen to you. Even if what you've got to say is productive and clean and unnecessary, you've got to then ask yourself what's going on with that partnership. And that'll show up throughout the rest of the reading. But the minute I see the Nine of Wands, I am on notice as to what's going wrong for that person. I want to know why they're not being heard. And this is also, I mean, I could push swords with it, but I'm not going to. This is somebody who can't find the right words. Doesn't matter which way it goes. And this is, for example, somebody who is, without necessarily showing what, you know how many voices have anybody, I mean, I've got about 3 voices in my head. They're always there. Then every now and again, there's this marvelous mystical voice that comes up with great solutions. Or there'll be AI having a little chat and giving me a huge dopamine hit to my right brain. But one of the voices in my head is what I call the rat voice. And that voice is always, you're too old, you can't do that. The first time I was really aware, I mean, I'm always aware that the rat voice is right. But I always hear the first thing of what the rat voice says, but I don't always listen to what the second part is. So when I first was 41 or 42, I wanted to do a martial art. And I'm sitting at the back of the room, putting the kids, they're going through the processes, and I'm going, I want to do this. And the rat voice is saying, you're too old. And I'm saying, fuck you, rat voice. There's always the option of listening to the rat voice. And if you listen to the rat voice, you'll never go anywhere and you'll never do anything. So the rat voice is probably that aspect of you that you've got left over from when the teacher, when you were in 4th class, told you couldn't go to the toilet until after the class was over. Fucking hate the rat voice. But the rat voice at least is challenging you to not like it. So when the rat voice said you're too old, I was kind of like, fuck you, and went up to Eruptananda at the end of the class and said to Erupti, I said, do you think I'm too old to do that? And he said, well, let's just find out. So 2 nights later, I started. And fast forward 30 years, or actually more than that, but 30 serious years of martial arts, I wasn't too old. It nearly killed me because it was hard. I did the work, just the warm-up, let alone the rest of it. But then I ended up teaching and ended up with my own school. So you can listen to the rat voice. Then there's the other voice. There's the one that always tells me what to do. It's 20 past 10. It's time to switch off your devices. I'm going, I'm in the middle of something. It's 20 past 10. And it doesn't tell me what to do. It's just this, your inner voices will regulate your behavior. Anybody here not know that voice? Then you'll get the deep voice whereby you'll be reading a book like Derek Jensen wrote a book called A Language Older Than Words. And it is a masterpiece of a book. And Derek Jensen, I mean, I would throw away every book that I've ever written to read that book because of how he brings together memoir with this deep understanding of ecological language and what part of leave the fucking forest alone don't you get? Don't poison the water. I mean, it's quite simple, but when he wrote the language older than words, I couldn't put it down. And I read it again straight after. So there's that voice, the voices that come from other people. And when voices come from other people and their brilliance, their astonishing brilliance, that's me saying, I can never write shit like that. So you'll experience different aspects of your own character in your own consciousness. And it seems like one person's talking, but if you listen, there's more than one. But then again, there's the understanding that each of us is an ecosystem. We have vast planes of trillions and trillions of people just on one eyelash. So let's not think that there's only one person in there doing the talking, because me doing the talking is the product of having 14.8 billion years of ancestral microbiome right here. So that's the Nine of Wands. Bloody beautiful card. But when you're reading tarot for somebody, it's actually not you talking. It's them talking, and you're translating what they are saying through you back to them. So you might sit there and think that you're talking for a full hour, but you're this. You're quiet. Your opinion doesn't matter. Your ethics don't matter. Your ideals don't matter. Your religion don't matter. If they do matter, don't read tarot. You've got no right. This is absolutely 100% unbiased. But to know that when I say to that, like that King of Swords earlier, I fucking didn't like him. Whoever I'm reading the cards for, I'm them. When I work out who it is, unless it's in a warning map. If it's in a warning map, then you can tell them to be forewarned about a certain kind of gaslighter, somebody who's working coercive control, somebody who's a spin doctor. Okay, but the Nine of Wands is none of those things. The Nine of Wands does shut you up. One more example, and then I'll get on to the Ten of Wands. I think we'll put them together. Oh, hang on. This is interesting. So, this way. This is when I was asked to go and direct Jesus Christ Superstar. I turned up at the Interactive Dance Zone. Some of the band members were there. Before I turned up, they'd all been standing around. They'd bought the rights from Andrew Lloyd Webber to do the show. But they'd been working with a guy called Bruce the Pixie. And Bruce the Pixie had everybody standing around the piano singing Kumbaya, or I Won't Drink Your Cup of Poison. And all these people had been cast for the show, but nothing was happening. One of the people playing one of the Pharisees met me for coffee and said, "Can you come in and save us, please?" And I said, "Yes." Oh, I wasn't quite sure. But when I turned up and I heard three of the people sing with the members of the band that were there, this was going to be a full orchestra, 32-piece orchestra, and we had 100 cast and crew. And after I'd listened to Elijah sing his song, and then Shannon Tate sing his song, then Mandy, who was down the other end of the room, she's working on 3-4 part harmonies with the chorus. That's this one, right? And I'm down the other end of the room, and Mandy's trying to get through to them, and they're talking between themselves. So there's all this babble was going on. People talking around, talking. And I listened to, I'd heard Mandy sing. She was playing the Magdalene in the story, and I was writing Magdalene at that time. So I was going to turn it as pagan as fuck. There was nothing Christian going to come out of me. I was going to have people fighting on stage, good choreography, etc. But I sat in the corner and I watched the disrespect that was happening amongst the chorus towards Mandy as she's attempting to get this show to bums on seats. And When I trained in theatre, which is way back in the 1960s, for goodness sakes, in direction, it was, I had to learn two things really clearly. One of them is the audience gets what they pay for, and no one on stage gets embarrassed. That was the criteria. So I just kept in the corner and listened to these people and listened to Mandy attempting to teach the 5-part harmony, and the guys from the band leaning on their instruments, and I ended up standing on a chair and I screamed, "Shut the fuck up," at the top of my lungs to all the people who were doing the chatting down the other end of the room. And it stopped the chat, and they all turned around and look, and Elijah looks at me, and he said, he was the producer, and he says, "Who the fuck are you?" And Susie said, "That's our new director." So that was that, and then I was hated for months because they had to give the people what they were paying for. And in those days, the year 2000, that was $25 per person. And there was 360 seats in that auditorium where they were going to put on the performance. So that's a lot of fucking money. And that's a lot of people who are going to be disappointed if the 5-part harmonies aren't working, when they've got an expectation. If the band doesn't turn up, people would be late. We'd have to put an ice cream container by the door. They had to put a gold coin in there if the people were late. I was hated because they thought I was some kind of fucking fascist. But the show went ahead. It was sold out. And so was the second season, was sold out. So it worked. This is where you go, I know what I want to say and I'm not budging. So this is also a card of people who are extremely stubborn. 9 of Wands. 10 of Wands, you're going to get the 10 of Wands. Well, as sure as anything, you'll get the 10 of Wands if somebody has got a 10 of Swords. And they may also have an Emperor with them, because the 10 of Swords is like, hump that bale, lift that barge, or hump that barge and lift that bale kind of thing. So if the 10 of Wands is, I mean, look at the person. I'll give them kudos. So you can start out with this. Make that 1. You could do this a couple of ways. Make that 1, make that 2, make that 3. So it goes, they've got a mess, then they pick it up. The sticks are everywhere, and then they're together. And through sheer fucking determination. Can you read that? There's the mess, there's the determination, there's when they've got their bundle together. This is also the way whereby if you've got a group of people, you know the philosophy that says one person can break, 2 people can break, you put them together, you can't break the bundle. It's the same thing politically. When people are scattered all over the place, nothing gets done. When they really, really work it and they come together, much can get done, and they won't get broken. They don't get broken. However, this will also turn up with, it will turn up with the 8 of Wands when a person's working the ground, working the field. And you quite often, if they've worked the field really, really well, they're going to turn up with an 8 of Pentacles, which is the growth, isn't it? So if they're planting food plants, then the next thing along would be growth. There would also be you could also end up with that, which is like where they feel that they're really on top of the whole situation. But this can actually just be this statement, you're on top of it now. But this also, the 10 of Wands, is moving. So you're moving from one place to another, one house to another house. And that's usually going to be when you've got 2 10s, you've got 10 of Cups and a 10 of Cups and a 10 of Pentacles, because that's 2 moves.
With the 5 of Wands, could it be actually building a house? Like building something?
Absolutely. But you need a 10 of Pentacles in there, you need a 10 of Cups to be somewhere in the midst of it all.
Physical home, yeah, or physical building.
Yeah. The other thing you'll get is this with a person who hurts their back. Hence, if you've got a 10 of Swords with this and a 9 of Swords with it, that's a person who's suffering backache. Because they tried to move the fridge on their own. But if this is quite extraordinary, and it can take the I can have a map in front of me. Let's look at the dead reckoning, and it's chaos. It's chaos. There's confusion. There's legal matters. There's stuff going on with the will. There's all kinds of discord associated with the end of a relationship, how it's going to fall down, etc. But if this is the foundation, I'll look at my client and go, but you'll handle it. This says you can handle it. You can carry this. It's so incredibly productive, but it will turn up with backache, and it will turn up if somebody's tried to carry something that was way too heavy. But on its own, as a foundation or as an outcome or as a significator, it is just giving that person so much kudos, even through a really difficult time when someone's going through chemotherapy for cancer, when they've buried their child, when they've been beaten and bashed, when they worked really, really hard to get their PhD, to get a master's, to get a BA, just to get through fucking high school, to leave the reservation if they're an Indigenous person who's been stuck in a reservation. This is go. You'll get there.
And you'd have the chariot card, mate. Could be with it too then.
The chariot. This is almost like the chariot. It's all the stuff that person's carrying, all the stories that they carry, all the knowledge that they carry, how much they've put up with year after year after year after year as a sole parent. When they've got to move, when they lose their job and they've got to get all their stuff together in the cardboard box and they've got to take it home. It's never a problem though. Because also if a person's got backache out of a 10 of swords, 9 of swords, it's destiny. If it's on the table, how can it be a problem? That's a 10 of swords. Knight of swords, Knight of wands, sorry. Knight of wands is just the journey. It's a car, it's a journey. Travel. That's it. Don't complicate it. People of Wands fire signs, Sagittarius, Leo, or Aries.
So does it, and I've heard you say that like fair-haired people or red-haired people, can it be?
I don't bother with that.
You don't? Okay.
No, that's out of the book. I mean, I might even put it in
your book.
On the odd occasion, it could be somebody who's fair.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you don't.
I know a lot of people who are black and they dye their hair. They get their hair bleached now. So when you've got hair dye, how does that work?
No, I'm just thinking about their natural.
No, don't think of natural. I mean, how many people here have got natural color in their hair? I have. Yay! Took a long time. Yeah, but most people won't. They'll do something out of a bottle.
Or like their complexion. That's what I was.
You're pushing it.
Well, only because I've seen it written down before. Maybe
I totally appreciate your point of view, but I'm saying you're pushing it.
Okay.
Because that word "fair" is a problem word. It's a fairly long way to Tipperary, so to speak. It's fairly easy. Divvying out the money, though, that's not fair. So I know the word can be used in so many different ways. If I'd say they're fair-haired, I'd need to know if it was out of a bottle. I'm more likely to see a person of swords with pale skin or pale hair.
I think it was redhead that I'd heard it said, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, you can only get so much out of a book, and you'll get so much more if you're actually reading.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that I've thought of, but it's just that I read it in the book and I thought, is that something that you could say rather than it being their star sign? Because you see,
I don't always say their star sign, because if I can get in the one map, where are they? If I get these two people, we got this earlier in your threes, or sorry, in your dead reckoning maps. we had the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Wands, and then in the next map we had the Page of Swords and the Page of Wands, and that's when I knew that they were siblings. Remember that? Well, when you look back at the videos, you'll see that. Whereas this one is talking about the younger one and the older one.
Yeah.
So say you're in a house with a couple of fire sign people. You've got to know whether the one you're going to hate is the younger one or the older one. And that person could be younger by 2 days. But this will tell you that that's the young. Also in a map, like a dead reckoning, this one could turn up in the position of the past. And this one could turn up in the position of the future. So how long are we talking about? 28 years from when that person was a child to when they're an adult? We're still talking about the same person. It depends on the context, because the Page of Wands can also be a project that's starting up. So you can have the Page of Wands worked really hard there, followed by the Ace of Wands, and that's the creation of a book. Because the other thing that will turn up with the pages, the kings and queens, they're grown-ups. They're likely to be grown-ups who are fire sign people, Sagittarius, Leo, or Aries. I'll stick with that. If sometimes I look at it and I know the person's a redhead or light-haired, for example, I'll see it.
I was going to say that's because you see it.
I'll fucking see it.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing it in the card. I'm
Yeah.
seeing it in the stratosphere, whereby we tend to work in two places. What's in front of us, that person's feeding you that information. You're not supposed to be a smart ass that knows all that. You'll see, I'm sitting down, I'm looking at things like drink spiking. I can see the club, I can see the bar, I can see the mirror behind the bar, I can see the bottles that are being mirrored in the mirror behind the bar, I can see the three people like out of Coyote Ugly who are behind the bar, and I can see the person putting the G in the other person's drink. And the person who's putting the G in the other person's drink is a blonde. And therefore, this person here could be the person who's being drink spiked and date raped. But if that person turns up in the same map as this, which one's having the date rape? This is how serious this gets. So it's like we can have fun here and talk about this and what it can and can't mean, but you're going to encounter some really, really trippy shit. And you better look at it you'll get it on the day. So if you're looking at somebody who's got gingerish type hair, you'll see them in the place while you're looking at the cards. Because you're never just going to look at the cards. You're going to have a running cinematography through your entire brain the entire time, through this vast complex, this vast mansion of so-called imagination. It's going on a worldwide level within the mansions of consciousness while you're actually doing the reading. So it's like triage. You're triaging between that person, the cards, and the inner mansions of self. What doesn't exist is just you. But in this instance, it would be the younger of the two. And then you'll have really interesting stuff. So you can get, for example, the ones where somebody is going through, if they had a 9 of Swords, that could be somebody who's going through transition, gender transition. And I get a lot of that down here in Nam. So you'll find that that's also going to tell you what's going to happen with them, whether they're going to be pleased with it, whether they're going to be upset in the long run, how other people are going to be, what's going to happen within consciousness. You'll get all of that in that big Grove map or in the Stargate map. But you could be guessing if you only just did a few cards. This is why you're going to need to do a good 8 maps to get a sense of direction, a sense of what's really happening on a 3D level, for sure. So these are all people, but the page is not necessarily people. This could also be a dog, because tarot doesn't species differentiate either. That is also the other thing. So a King of Wands could turn up if you've got a Rottweiler. and this is my best buddy. Pi would turn up as this, except he would turn up as a King of Pentacles because he's a Virgo. So he'd be a King of Pentacles. But being a small King of Pentacles, he could turn up as a Page of Pentacles because he's still a Virgo.
Well, would there have to be a strength card there, though, for that?
Hey?
Would there have to be a strength card there for that?
But now,
how do you know it's a dog? Because there'll be other signs to tell you that.
Probably the strength card to turn up there as well.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult because if you can get rid of your species bias, I think that's very important, because this is a work of ecology, first and foremost. It's a work of the forest. And everybody in the forest includes you, the cards, the person sitting opposite you, and a vast number of species. And very often, to help the client to understand that this is dog person, cat person, camel, horses, for example, this person would turn up with a Knight of Swords and a potential Chariot or a potential Ace of Pentacles if they're a thoroughbred racehorse. But again, we're just looking at 1 or 2 or 3 cards together. But see, because the Knight of Swords is speed. What kind of speed is it? We saw it earlier in one of your readings, and I said they're doing the Dakar, didn't I?
Well, could that Queen of Swords have been the horse?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it depends on whether your species differentiate, because most people's species differentiate, and that's really quite deadly. Because your philosophy is then biased by human behavior, and we're not taking into consideration the actuality of other species and their right to be despite us, which is such a fucking huge philosophy, isn't it? And it's really necessary to go there with the philosophy as well, to break all the bullshit that we've been trained with all over these years. Like from childhood, we've all been trained into into thinking we're the top of the food chain. And unfortunately, so many countries in the world are biblical. And the bottom line is, if man was made in the image of God, what a fuck up that was. That's it. People, any questions? That was Wands.